Hello, my name is Zoe Van Nostrand. I'm the Marketing and Community Outreach Coordinator at the History Center in Tompkins County, and I'm going to be your host for Moog Music Hour this evening. I'm going to do my best not to stumble over the pronunciation of Moog, synthesizer, and other terms, but I apologize in advance if I do. This video is going to be going over the history of the Moog synthesizer and how it came to be developed in Tompkins County, explaining the technical aspects of a synthesizer, and also demonstrating how it is played. If you'd prefer just to listen to some of the wonderful music that features a Moog synthesizer, you're welcome to visit the History Center in Tompkins County YouTube channel for our Moog Music Hour playlist, featuring the Beatles, Donna Summer, Brainiac, The Byrds, Stevie Wonder, Portishead, and many more. Due to copyright issues, we aren't able to feature these songs or videos in this program, but we are happy to share our playlist with you. This program is part of our virtual fundraiser for Giving is Gorgeous. Giving is Gorgeous is an annual 24-hour celebration of philanthropy for nonprofits serving in Tompkins County. We are requesting viewers to donate a minimum of $5 to the History Center in Tompkins County this evening. You can see the link to donate at the bottom of this video. The History Center in Tompkins County has long been the community steward of our shared history. Our organization first began meeting in 1863. We safeguard the physical pieces of history for future generations, build inspirational educational opportunities for all ages, and create space to use the lessons from yesterday to inform a more equitable tomorrow. We're proud to collect and share the narratives of the people and places that make Tompkins County special. COVID-19 has profoundly reshaped our future. Like many cultural institutions across the nation, we closed our door at the outset of the epidemic in March. We're still wrestling with the heartbreak of locking up our new exhibit hall on the Ithaca Commons and limiting all physical access to our archives and collections. The History Center family has always exemplified the very best of Tompkins County. We are asking you to donate to us tonight. Your gift does much more than ensure our future. You ensure the saved history of this region and the continued access of it for everyone in our community. You can donate throughout the evening, even up until 11:59 p.m. at our fundraising page, www.givingisgorgeous.org/organizations/the History Center in Tompkins County. We know that's a bit of a mouthful, so you can also search for the History Center in Tompkins County at the search bar at the top of their website, which is givingisgorgeous.org. Gorgeous is spelled Gorges, just like our common Ithaca is Gorgeous slogan. If you could donate before 10 p.m., that will count as part of our Night Owl Power Hour. And if our organization receives the most individual donations between 9 and 10 p.m., we'll receive an additional $150 from GiveGab. So if you could, we'd appreciate you helping us reach this goal. This evening, we'll be exploring the history of the Moog synthesizer, which was originally developed in Trumansburg, New York, and also exploring some of the music that has been made with it from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s to today. Helping explain the use and technology behind Moog is Cornell professor Bob Reed. Bob Reed is a synthesizer enthusiast, however, he's not part of the music department. He's a professor and associate curator of, and I apologize when I mispronounce this, Lepidoptera at the Cornell University Insect Collection. He has a particular research interest in the evolution and development of color patterns, especially butterfly wings. We're especially grateful to him for taking the time at the end of this semester to share his love and knowledge of the Moog synthesizer with us. Between Bob's clips explaining the science behind the Moog, I'm going to walk you through some of the Tompkins County history of Moog and share some of the phenomenal music that has used this instrument. I'll be back in a bit, but without further ado, here's Bob Reed.
Hi, my name is Bob Reed, and I'm a synthesizer enthusiast and scientist living here in Ithaca, New York. And I want to thank you for tuning in on Giving Day. And I'm here to talk about Moog synthesizers for the Tompkins History Center. So, as a lot of you may know, Moog is a famous manufacturer of synthesizers. The company was founded by Bob Moog, M-O-O-G, and Bob was a graduate student at Cornell in the early 1960s. And when he was a college student, he manufactured electronic instruments, or actually kits to make them, instruments called theremins, which you may have seen. So it's like a couple metal bars, and you wave your hands around them, and you get these woo 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 kind of sounds, right? So he was a electronics and music enthusiast from early on. But in the early 60s, he started to tinker with more sophisticated instrumentation, which eventually evolved into the modern synthesizer, the analog synthesizer. After he left Cornell, he graduated, he started his company in earnest producing modular synthesizers, and he commercialized them starting in 1964. And they were some of the best, earliest synthesizers that musicians used to generate music. Certainly there were other designers and companies that produced mechanical sound making devices that were used mostly for kind of experimental music before that. But Moog, one of his great innovations was producing an instrument that was friendly to the sensibility of musicians, traditional musicians. So he graduated from Cornell, he started his company and started producing synthesizers in Trumansburg, and that's where he was located for several years before then moving to Buffalo. And now his company, even though he's passed away, his company is still active, and they're located in Asheville, North Carolina, making fantastic musical instruments. So I just want to highlight two things that I see as the major contributions of Bob Moog to electronic music and music in general. First of all, as I said, people had made electronic music making devices before him, but he really created the architecture, the musician-friendly architecture that we're used to today in modern synthesizers. And there's a couple elements to that architecture that are worth talking about. The first, and still the most powerful Moog synthesizers, are what we call modular instruments. So you can see behind me a modern modular synth. It's kind of like a miniaturized version of an original 1960s Moog synthesizer. But here you have all of these small pieces, right, these individual modules, some of which generate sounds and others of which manipulate sounds, and still a third set will generate patterns and signals that then you can plug into the sound generators and sound manipulators to produce patterns. Right, so these are all modules that you put together into this musical ecosystem and connect them together with cords, what we call patch cables. And this whole architecture goes back to Moog. So the original Moog synthesizers in the mid and late 60s were all these gigantic wall-size modular instruments, kind of like this one behind me. And this one has many modules from different manufacturers, including a Moog one up here, which I'll demonstrate in another clip. But this whole architecture goes back to him. And then the architecture of the sound genesis and manipulation, essentially what the individual modules do, but most of it goes back to his ideas that he generated, especially in collaboration with a New York musician, pianist named Herbert Deutsch. And I guess one thing worth mentioning in particular is the envelope. That was an idea that goes back to Bob Moog and Herb Deutsch. It's basically the circuit or the module here that gives a sound its shape or character, how the sound will come in quickly or slowly or decay at different speeds. You could shape the sound coming out of the synth instead of just a beep, beep, right? You can go, ooh, like if you were playing a violin, or you have the attack and decay on like when you strike a key on a piano, right? So that's the envelope, and Moog made envelope filter or envelope generator modules, and I have envelopes here, and that's a key part of any synthesizer now, the envelope. So you may have heard of the term ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, release, right? It's the contour of a note that's played. That goes back to Moog. Moog also formalized the idea of making sounds through what we call subtractive synthesis. So you start with a raw oscillation or sound wave, and you mold the sound by taking away elements from the wave, often using a filter, right? So you start with this full raw sound, and then you filter out aspects of the sound. You subtract from the sound to create the color you want, right? So that's commonly what's used in analog synthesizers now, subtractive synthesis. And there's other flavors of synthesis, including shaping and folding waves and so forth, which was more common in so-called West Coast synthesis, popularized by Buchla. But Moog works by subtractive synthesis, and that's still by far the most common form of analog synth sound palettes. So obviously one could nerd out in a lot more detail about the specifics of the different technologies that Bob Moog produced and popularized over the years. But just in general, it's this format, the modular format, and then aspects of these different modules that you can put together to shape and color your sound, which was one of his most important innovations, one of his most important technical innovations. And I would say his second major innovation beyond the technology was commercialization and accessibility, right? So in the mid-60s, he started making these instruments and selling them to musicians. And in collaboration, again, with Herb Deutsch and others, he was able to make the creation and manipulation of sound accessible to non-electronic musicians, right? So part of that was through the interface he developed, the technology of the interface. But it was also in, especially later on, kind of in the second wave of his designs, it was with integrating this technology with keyboards, right? So a keyboard, like a piano keyboard, is an intuitive interface to make sounds for a lot of musicians. And a lot of people today, when you say synthesizer, they picture a keyboard in their mind, but the earliest synthesizers didn't have keyboards. Certainly people, had experimented with hooking up keyboards to synthesizers like this. But Bob Moog, when he created the Mini Moog synthesizer keyboard, really perfected the combination of the keyboard interface, like the piano player interface, with the technology you see behind me, right? It was a simple, awesome sounding musical instrument that any classically trained pianist could pick up and start playing immediately. You could start tweaking the knobs, and everything was it was set up perfectly to make beautiful sound, and you didn't have to be able to patch stuff together with cables or necessarily understand in great detail how envelopes and filters and stuff like that works. You just push the buttons, and cool sound comes out. So that was a big deal, especially for like rock music, progressive music, pop music, going back in the 1970s, right? You hear the Mini Moog, this little keyboard that was manufactured in Trumansburg here, all over classic albums from the 70s and 80s, and now, right? It's a beautiful, amazing sounding instrument, which I have a clone of right here, as a matter of fact, in modular format. Right, so just going back to the main ideas, right? This improved accessibility and commercialization and affordability of this kind of technology for musicians was a very important contribution of Moog to the world, in addition to producing this technology. So of course, everything he's done has had a major impact on, expression in our culture. And you'll see that everywhere. And it's something that traces back here to Ithaca, in Tompkins County. All right, well, thanks for listening. You can check out a couple of the other clips I made where I do a demo of playing a little bit of music for a few minutes on this setup behind me. And then I also do a demo in particular of this Moog synthesizer right here, the Mother 32. It's a little miniaturized modular synthesizer that is produced now, and it's a lot of fun and it sounds great. So stick around and check those clips out. And again, thank you for your attention and for tuning in on Giving Day. All right, I'm Bob Reed. See ya.
Hi, it's Zoe here again. I'm going to share a little more history about how Bob Moog ended up developing the Moog synthesizer in Trumansburg. Bob Moog was born on May 23, 1934 in Flushing, New York. You'll notice that we're just about coming up to what would have been his 86th birthday. Unfortunately, Mr. Moog passed away in 2005 due to an inoperable brain tumor. By all accounts, he was a brilliant student and excelled in his studies and was fascinated by electronics and music from a very young age. He was building simple radios and other electronic hobbyist projects with his father at the age of 10 and built his first theremin, another groundbreaking electronic instrument, at the age of 15. His hobby for electronic instruments and sounds continued to guide his path, and in 1953, while pursuing a dual degree in electrical engineering and physics at Queens College and Columbia University, he and his friend George founded Ramco, building Model 201 theremins for public sale. Bob was only 19 at the time. Fast forward a few years, and Bob is accepted to Cornell University, where he plans to pursue a PhD in engineering physics. He brings his business, now called R.A. Moog Company, with him, and sets up shop in his new home in Ithaca, and continues to build theremins and other DIY music kits for sale. He's becoming well known in the electronic music genre after the publication of an essay of his entitled The Theremin, which reached national audiences in 1954. He continues to innovate on the design of the theremin, creating additional models such as the Vanguard, Melodia, and the Troubadour. In 1963, Bob had enough consistent business to move R.A. Moog Company out of his house and into a storefront in Trumansburg, New York, only a 20-minute drive from where he was continuing to work on his PhD at Cornell. This storefront is now the site of Little Venice Ristorante, a popular restaurant and bar in Trumansburg. This site is highlighted in the Village of Trumansburg walking tour, which was developed as part of a series of self-guided historic tours in Tompkins County using the Pocket Sites app. Less than a year after moving into the new space, Bob and Herb Deutsch, a friend and colleague, developed the first voltage-controlled modular electronic music equipment. While this might seem a little technical or obvious now, this advancement was absolutely groundbreaking. The synthesizer, which would be released in only a few years, had three main components: sources, controllers, and modifiers, and voltage control made it all work. Adjusting the voltage permits the user to change the octave or pitch emitted by the instrument in real time. Bob and Herb spent the next few years perfecting this device and presenting it to conferences, workshops, and music makers across the country. R.A. Moog Company continued to get requests for their devices, and in 1966, the Beach Boys commissioned one of their theremins for their song Good Vibrations. In 1967, from their workshop in Trumansburg, they released the standard models for the synthesizer 1, 2, and 3. Later that year, the Moog synthesizer was demonstrated at the Monterey Pop Festival in California, introducing the device to many of the most popular performers of the day. In 2016, after extensive effort and lobbying in the community, a historical marker was placed outside 4749 East Main Street in Trumansburg to commemorate the original factory location of R.A. Moog Company. I wanted to remind everyone that every donation you make between 9 and 10 p.m. tonight helps us reach our goal of getting the most individual donations during the Night Owl Power Hour. If our organization wins this hour, we'll get an additional $150 donation from GiveGab. Any amount you can give will help us build our local history collections and educational opportunities in Tompkins County. I'm going to turn you back over to Bob Reed, who is going to demonstrate how you play the Moog synthesizer. Hi everyone, Zoe here again. Thank you, Bob, for that. It's really fun to see all the ways you can modify sounds using a Moog synthesizer. Now, I'm not sure who's watching, but if you're like me, you might not have realized how many popular songs use a Moog synthesizer. I'm talking really famous. Here Comes the Sun and Maxwell's Silver Hammer by the Beatles, Funky Town by Lips Incorporated, Head Like a Hole by Nine Inch Nails, Magic Man by Heart, I Feel Love by Donna Summer, just to name a very select few. Now, unfortunately, I can't play any clips from these due to copyright restrictions, but you can listen to many Moog songs using the Moog Music Hour playlist on the History Center's YouTube channel. After the synthesizers 1, 2, and 3 release in 1967, they were immediately popular with some of the world's most famous rock groups, featured on songs by The Doors, The Monkees, The Grateful Dead, and The Beatles. It was also adapted by jazz musicians, including Herbie Hancock, Jan Hammer, and Sun Ra. For a period, the name Moog became so associated with electronic music that it was sometimes used as a generic term for any synthesizer. Numerous novelty records were recorded with titles such as Moog España, Moog Power, and Music to Moog By. Synthesizers and their modulated tones became a staple sound in the funk and disco sounds of the 1970s, but their versatility didn't stop there. More recently, hip-hop groups such as the Beastie Boys and rock bands including They Might Be Giants and Wilco have revived an interest in the sounds of the early Moog synthesizers. This wealth of music, crossing genres, decades, and continents, can all be traced back to Bob Moog's factory in Trumansburg in the 1960s. Bob Reed is going to play another demo set on his synthesizer. Facebook limits videos to 45 minutes, so we're going to finish a little under the hour, but we encourage everyone to take that extra 15 minutes to explore the Moog Music Hour playlist on YouTube and to donate to our Giving is Gorgeous campaign before 10 p.m. to help us with the Night Owl Power Hour prize.
Hi, this is Bob Reed, and I'm going to give a demo of the Moog Mother 32 semi-modular synthesizer. This is a recently produced synth from Moog, and it's essentially a miniaturized reimagining of the 1960s style modular. I'll back out here. And you could see that this Moog synthesizer is actually part of a larger modular synth that I have. So this is a kind of a miniaturized format of the 1960s Moog modular paradigm. There are individual modules that produce sounds, there are modules that alter sounds, and there are different modules that produce signals that you use to modify the modifiers of the sounds. So that was one of Bob Moog's major contributions to music and synthesis, was this modular paradigm where you have collections of these different modules that do different things. You could patch them to each other with cables and produce music. So this is a completely independent synthesizer. It's the centerpiece of my larger modular synth here, but inside this Mother 32 are all of the individual modules you would need to make music. So it's completely self-contained. There's even a little keyboard on it. These buttons down here are a small keyboard. So you can push these buttons and get your different tones here. Also embedded in this is a sequencer, meaning you could store sequences of notes and play them back. So I programmed a little sequence in here. I could press play, and here we have a little sequence. And we could play with the sound as the Moog is playing this little arpeggio. Just pitch it down a little bit. So here's a knob here where you can control the frequency or the pitch of the main oscillator. There are a couple different waveforms that have different sounds that you can change. And there's all these knobs that will alter the sound in different interesting ways. to give you the capability of shaping the sound. So one of Bob Moog's other big contributions to music is the development of a filter, right? So we start with a raw wave. Here we have a square wave, and we shape the sound by removing frequencies. So here we're filtering out the high end of the sound to change the characteristic of the sound. So that's what this knob does right here, and this is a very characteristic Moog sound. This filter. It's called a low pass filter because the low frequencies get through, and you're cutting off the high frequencies to shape the sound. And this particular transistor circuit is famous for that fantastic wow wow sound. And it resonates as well, which gives it... See, there I took the resonance off. Here, turn the resonance up. Yeah, you get that Moog sound right there. Wow. There you go, the famous Moog transistor ladder filter. Yeah, so I'm sure you've heard that sound before in many places, and this is where it comes from right here. Bob Moog. And there are many new flavors of the filter, but yeah, I mean, this is really the first one that sounded like this and became famous in the 60s and 70s. Alright, so let's play around a little bit here. One of the other big contributions of Moog to music and synthesis is what we call the envelope, right? So before Moog, people had made analog machines that make sound. You know, the sound has to start and stop in a certain pattern. But working with Herb Deutsch, Moog really thought through of how a musical instrument, like a stringed instrument or a piano, would produce a sound, and they encoded that concept into attack and decay. So attack is how long it takes for the sound to ramp up. See, this is coming in kind of slow. Wow. And now here we could make the attack faster. See, now it just bomp comes right in. See, now the sound's slow if we slow down the attack, and then it pops in faster if we turn up the attack. Right, so that's the ramp going up. And then we have the ramp down of the sound, like how long it takes for the sound to decay. So we have attack and decay. So the sound goes away right away. So that's a fast decay. Then we have a slow decay. Right, so that's the envelope. How long it takes for the sound to go up and then to go down. So Bob Moog and Herb Deutsch really formalized how we think of the envelope and incorporated that into their original early 60s synthesizer design. Right, so it's a very musical way of thinking about pitches. You know, it's intuitive to us now, but in the early 60s it was an important breakthrough to turn this into a musical instrument that musicians could manipulate and appreciate and be productive with. Alright, so let's run this little sequence again. Then we can play around with the characteristic of the sound here. See here, we're changing the decay, so we get short little notes. Then we can lengthen them. Like that. There's the envelope. And we can play with the filter. Right, that's all Moog right there. And now we can control that filter to go up and down and cycle at a low frequency. Turn up that resonance. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's mix some different waves together, a sawtooth wave and a square wave. Give a little more depth to the sound. Alright, now here's a fun little trick. We can add some echo to the sequence. So each note is being repeated. Changing the pitch of the sequence so the Moog can transpose the sequences. Gives nice effects. So all the music that's being made right now is only from this Moog, with the addition of an echo module that I have this running through. So you could use like a guitar delay pedal or an old tape delay or anything to get this effect. So this is a completely self-contained instrument. It's a lot of fun. So there you go, that's the Moog Mother 32. Totally fun, great sounding instrument made by Moog in Asheville, North Carolina. Thanks for listening.
Hello everyone, I'd like to thank Bob Reed for sharing his love of Moog synthesizers with us. If you'd like to hear more of Bob's music, you can find him on Instagram at Bobby_Gorgon, Gorgonne. I'd also like to highlight a current exhibition on Bob Moog and Moog synthesizers at the Hirschland Exhibition Gallery in the Carl A. Crouch Library at Cornell University. This exhibition opened on March 6 and was planned to be on display through October. The library is currently closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but hopefully they will be able to reopen to the public again soon. Thank you for joining us for Moog Music Hour, This Giving is Gorgeous. I hope you learned something, and we'll take some time in the next few months to travel out to Trumansburg and marvel at the birthplace of the Moog synthesizer. Our donation page will be live until midnight, and we truly appreciate your support. Be sure to follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our monthly newsletter to keep up to date on all the latest programs and projects at the History Center in Tompkins County. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you for joining us.